Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Next Goal Wins podcast. I'm your host Joe and I'll be joined by my co-host and good friend Sam. On today's podcast, we'll be answering an age-old question amongst football fans. Will England be able to win another major trophy anytime soon? First of all, we just want to say a massive thank you for listening and we hope that you enjoyed the first podcast.
Alright Joe, how you keeping?
I'm good, how are you mate?
All good, been looking forward to the podcast.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, hopefully the first of many to come.
Yeah, interesting topic to start off with.
Coming from both
of
angles,
course,
obviously we've got me,
yeah.
the Englishman, and you over the little hop, skip and a jump to Northern Ireland.
Yeah, you'll come from your slightly biased point of view and I'll come from my neutral point of view, so it'll be good to get both
You'll
viewpoints.
be alright. At least we know what it's like to be at a World Cup, so it'll be alright.
We'll not talk about that. But we do have good hopes for the next Euros anyway. We're into the qualifying stages to get into the actual competition.
It's looking up.
So,
looking up for you.
why do you actually think England have maybe underachieved in the past?
I think there's plenty of reasons where they've just not reached their full potential, and you can go back and look at every tournament that they've been at since obviously 1966, where they did obviously win it on home soil. But more recently, if you go back to Euro 2016, you look at the record that they had in that tournament. They drew with Russia on the opening day, who you can argue weren't a brilliant team. Then I think it was more of an emotion game against Wales, beating them 2-1 in the last minute, and then they finished off the groups with a 1-1 draw with Slovakia, and then everyone knows what followed with that in the knockouts regarding Iceland. So I think just not performing at that tournament was a big problem, with obviously 2 draws, a loss and only 1 win. You can't expect.
I think a massive thing that I seen at that tournament specifically was that the team really didn't have an identity as such. It just sort of looked like everybody wasn't on the same wavelength. I think now that Gareth Southgate is in, and there has been the creation of seems like there's been the creation of a sort of philosophy since then on a way that he wants England to play.
Yeah,
as it was coming up to the last World Cup, you were able to see that he wanted to play 3 players at the back. Because you've seen all that in the opening games. But I think perhaps before that, there was too much change.
Yeah, definitely. I think coming from a fan perspective, I think the point that fans really did lose hope in that tournament was just seeing Harry Kane on corners. I think that was just. It baffled everyone. I think that just drew a lot of hope away from the team, because you just thought.
Just going back to the sort of identity part around the England team. Previous to the last World Cup in the Euros, where they maybe didn't live up to what they were really hyped up to be, which happens many a times with England.
Yeah.
It seems, with the media and stuff. As an Englishman yourself, Did you feel the same sort of affinity to the team? Did you feel like the same sort of culture was created, or?
I think, with the Euros in 2016, I think there was always expectation going into it. I think that was the peak of the expectation, because people still believed that they could win it. Whereas if you go to the World Cup in 2018, there was sort of no expectation. I can remember myself and plenty of other people that I know, we just didn't have any expectations going into it, and I think that resonated with the team because they looked quite relaxed, and just the camp, when you saw photos or videos, was just a good atmosphere, and there wasn't too much pressure on it.
Do you feel that was driven by Gareth Southgate, creating that sort of atmosphere, or do you feel like it was probably created by the low expectation?
I think it's just a mix of everything. I think Southgate because he's been there as a player, he knew what it was like to be at these tournaments as a player. Whereas you look at past managers, we've had, Sven-Goran Eriksson, not English. Capello's not English. Roy Hodgson, great manager, but just not. He never played for England, so he didn't know what it's like for these players. But there was a lack of expectation, and I think that carried them through. And by the time that they got to the knockouts, they were there was no outside noise for the players, really, I'm guessing, in the camp, so they couldn't get the expectation on them then. But I think if you do look at that World Cup, I've got the stat here that they played 7 in the World Cup, won 4, lost 3, and you could argue the 3 games that they lost were against the only good opposition, being Belgium, Croatia, and then Belgium again. Both Belgium games, in fairness, were, could argue, not write-off games, because obviously in the groups both teams were through, and in the third place game it's not the same when obviously you can't expect players to put their all out when they've just been knocked out of a World Cup semi-final. So I think you could argue that, but like I said, they played against 4 average teams, maybe Colombia being the best of a bad bunch, but that had to go to penalties. So I think it's just not being able to beat the
what I think
best
actually
teams.
was something. What I think I did see was something was being built. I didn't feel like England did reach their full potential in that tournament. When you look at some of the individual players in the team, and I think even more so now, that some of the players have developed more. That they do have a few world class players. You've got the likes of Jordan Henderson now. I would count as a world class player. He's been there. He's won the Champions League with Liverpool. He's done well in the Premier League this season, but at that stage, at the World Cup, the likes of Jordan Henderson, I don't really think you would have said is up there with the best in the world.
No.
Whereas I even think Harry Kane's developed since then. Sterling's found a bit more consistency, and you've also got the likes of Maguire, who stepped up to a higher level with more expectation, playing for Man United, which is
with the
close, if not the same as matching the expectation as you have when playing for England. So I think at that last World Cup something was being built, and we might see that in the future.
Well, we hope so, definitely. But another stat which alarmed me was looking at England at the Euros and at the World Cup. At the Euros they've played 31 games, won 10, drawn 11, lost 10. When at the World Cup, played 69, won 29, drawn 21 and lost 19. I think the main thing that stands out for me there is definitely the amount of draws. I think it's alarming, the fact that I think if you look back, there's just not the ability in tournament football for the England team to just settle a game and really, when you go 1-0 up, get the second. It seems to be get one and then defend, from what I've seen, and then it just invites pressure against the best teams. Yeah.
Well, I do think that probably back then, that comes into the game, probably the lack of experience back then, and the fact that I do think they were building towards something. I think the only player in that team who probably had a great deal of responsibility at the time was probably Harry Kane, because he's been Spurs' key player for years now. Whereas the likes of Rashford maybe wasn't relied upon as much at Man United. Sterling hadn't really quite found the form that he's found, in the past couple of seasons with Man City. And Henderson as well wasn't such a pivotal role in Liverpool's team. Liverpool weren't quite getting the same success then. And also Harry Maguire stepped up, as we said. So I do think that might be a thing, that they were kind of inexperienced then, and they might develop to try and be more successful in the in the times ahead.
Definitely.
I think if the Euros were going to go ahead this summer, that England were going to have a chance of winning it, no doubt. What's your thoughts on that?
I think, like you say, there's been a good sort of rebuild, and they are getting to a point where I feel they could have gone to the later stages of the.
Sorry, stop here. I think the difference is between this Euros and the last Euros was. Sorry, this Euros and the last World Cup was, before the last World Cup, everybody sort of expected England to do nothing. Yeah. But I think now, for this Euros here, everybody did expect them to get to the stage where they're pushing to win it. They're definitely getting a semi-final. If they didn't get a semi-final to match the last World Cup, I think that would have been deemed as unsuccessful. Obviously, it depends on what teams they played to get to that stage.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, if they got a really a top class team in the quarterfinals, so like your Germanys, your Spains, then, or your Hollands, then it might have been different.
And I think that's what we need to worry about, is how other teams are sort of building as well. You look at the likes of Germany, who had a complete washout of their squad and sort of started again, used the past few years as a rebuilding era, and then this extra year just going to give them more time to gel as a
Holland
team.
as
and then
well.
You look at the likes of Holland, exactly, Holland, who have got
Holland
a great young side. And then you just can't look.
That's
look
it.
past
But the
teams
thing
like
is,
France.
I think Holland are maybe at the stage that England were a few years ago. So where they're quite inexperienced, even though they did win in the Nations League. But when it comes to the likes of a Euros or World Cup, it's a lot different. There's a lot more pressure put upon the players. Yeah. They're not just tested on their actual skill; they're tested on how they deal with the whole occasion. Really, I do think the players in the England team, some of the players in the England team have, developed since then, especially some of the young players, and I think it will continue to happen in the future as well. Now that the Euros has obviously been suspended the next summer, how do you think that brings another twist to the tail?
I think it allows, obviously it's a no-brainer, it allows teams to prepare and get that extra year in, but also I think because we have got such good young talent, it gives them an extra year to gain more experience. And the likes of Jadon Sancho, who knows where he'll be at the start of next season. He might be at a Premier League club, so he might get that big money move to the Premier League, which could either make or break him, depending on how it goes. So obviously, like I say, it gives them good time, and it sort of gives Southgate extra time to sort of decide on his final squad, which is obviously.
I think the promising thing now is that I do think young players are getting more of the chance in the Premier League. Obviously, in recent times, it has been said that clubs were overlooking sort of English talent in their under 23s team and the reserve teams, and bringing in talent from other countries. Obviously, some clubs have the resources to be able to scout and bring talent in from other countries a lot more than other clubs. But I think even the top clubs now, it seems that there is more English players in their squad, and they're starting to see that they do have the talent at home and don't always have to go abroad. Just like the first game day of the season there in the Premier League, just this season there was 37% of players that started. It's across all games. Wow. Were players that qualified to play for England. That's the highest since the starting day of the 2011 season, which was 38%. However, obviously, I think that stat about 2011 season can maybe be written off because England didn't have quite the success then. But I think the players that are on show now are probably a higher ability than the English players coming through around the 2011 season, and that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think if you do look at like you say, the percentage that are, I think it's not just making up the numbers with some English players now. I think England players are really pushing at the top level of the Premier League. You could argue like the likes of Sterling and Trent Alexander-Arnold are at the top of the game. Well, Trent Alexander-Arnold's definitely got more to give, but they're definitely competing towards a world-class stature, I think. So it's definitely looking up.
That's it. All these players have been given the opportunity to develop since then, and they've been obviously a big thing as well over at Chelsea is they've been forced into that situation with the transfer ban.
Maybe a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, but before the transfer ban, they still were attempting to develop these players by having them all on loan at different clubs. I can see the likes of Reece James, Mason Mount, Hudson-Odoi, Tammy Abraham as well, and Tamari pushing on really in the next few years. We don't know what stage they'll be at. at the end of next season to compete in the Euros. They might have another season under their belt. I don't think they're quite at that level that, of competing at a World Cup, competing at a world class level, as we're seeing in the Champions League. Against teams like Ajax and stuff. But
yeah,
I think if you give them another season, then them guys as well are also contenders for starting 11.
Yeah.
At the World Cup.
Flipping that point, I'm going to ask you: do you think? Obviously, you're talking about foreign players coming into England. Do you think more players should follow the likes of Jadon Sancho and sort of take the risk and experiment by playing maybe in Europe for European teams, and that possibly could help play at these tournaments?
I feel like Jadon Sancho maybe moved to Dortmund around a time where we still weren't there yet, in terms of enough English players getting a chance in the Premier League. I think the successes of the likes of Alexander-Arnold, now more so what's happened to Chelsea, that everybody's sort of standing up and taking a bit of recognition that this can be done. You can develop your own players, the English players, instead of going across and getting foreign talent. But I do think that was around the time where he was maybe forced into that decision. Well, not forced as such, but he took that decision as he thought that because there's so many quality players at City, he maybe wouldn't get a chance. I could see Phil Foden doing a similar thing in the next season or so if he doesn't get more game time at City. I feel like he might have to go across abroad to get more match experience. I feel like that's happened at Arsenal as well. Gnabry went across to get more match experience, to get more experience because he wasn't quite getting the chance at Arsenal. But I feel like now it's different because even if you look at Arsenal, you've got the likes of Saka coming through.
Yeah.
You are getting them clubs are sort of learning from their mistakes, and I feel like that's something that the English game has learned from.
So it's an interesting point.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, just one last thing. In terms of players moving abroad, I think it's different at the top clubs where you have so many good players, the likes of City, Silva, De Bruyne, and like Fernandinho, Rodri, that Phil Foden have to compete with. So the likes of him, he may have to get a move across to develop.
So do you think that would be with regarding Foden a permanent move, or do you think it'd be best for a loan move to a side?
Obviously, it depends on what City want to do with that, but I think City do see a lot of potential in it. With some of the stuff that Guardiola has said in the media, but I do think either of them would be beneficial for him. To be honest, it'll be beneficial for him and England. I feel like England do need players that have experienced the game in different countries. It's quite broadcasted that in different countries the game's maybe slower. It's played at a different tempo, but what's to say that that's a tempo that you're going to find in the World Cup? Or
yeah, exactly.
They say it's not quite the same as Premier League, but when you watch international football, I do think it is a different speed to what you see in the Premier League because you're playing against so many different nations. And I feel like the likes of England do struggle with that sometimes. Yeah. There's no real flow in the game. Do they have players that can adapt? Can they dig in? Can they change their style of play without having to receive instruction from the coach?
Yeah.
And yeah.
There would be an argument that some people will say that why does that need to happen? There's plenty of foreign imports in the Premier League, but I think you can argue that the style of play is just going to come down to the coaches. I think you could have as many different nationalities in your team, but if the coach wants you to play one way, you've got to play that way. So I think even though there is a lot of players from overseas in the Premier League, it's just not going to be the same as when you play it against teams.
I feel what dictates the pace and the style of play in the Premier League is the fact that there is so many talented players. Every single club has international players, which means that the play will be a certain pace, whereas you maybe go to the Bundesliga, You have clubs knocking about round the bottom who are just going to sit and basically, as Mourinho quoted, park the bus. In international terms, you're going to come up against teams that will do that, and you need to figure out a way of how to break them down. It's not always going to be blow for blow the way it sometimes is in the Premier League, and that's why I think English players could benefit from growing abroad.
So moving on to the next topic that we've got, how do you feel the squad can reach their potential then before the next Euros or maybe the next World Cup?
I feel like England will have enough talented players to have a good squad for the next Euros, but I think the real work has to take place within the next load of games that England have, international friendlies, that are leading up to the tournament. They really need to continue to build something that they did towards the last tournament. They need to have a recognised style of play. They need to not exactly tinker with the squad until 2 weeks before the World Cup, then select their 23-man squad. I feel like it's really important that they have a set squad much earlier.
Yeah, I feel like that has been a problem.
Yeah.
Because you look at squads that they've picked leading up to World Cups, and personally I think there's just been too many different players in there, just experimenting every time rather than just getting that set squad and drilling it into them how to play with each other, so they just learn.
That's exactly
the best way.
Yeah, and I feel like we did see a bit of that in the the build up to the last major tournament. We've seen the same formation for a load of times. It was 3-5-2. He was playing, and we could see he was building towards that, and there was a recognised style of play. But I think the thing there maybe was that he didn't quite know who the best players were in each position, because there was still a lot of change. Whereas now, I feel like they're now at the next level, where they know players who can play each different position. Southgate has an idea of maybe more how to get the best out of each player now. And I think that's just another step in the building process. Whereas I think England managers in the past maybe haven't been given time to do that. Or they maybe haven't been able to build because they can't really relate as such to what the players are going through. And as you say, Gareth Southgate has been through all this, so I feel like if there's anybody, then he's the man.
No one better, especially with what he experienced through his time.
Yeah. Dear.
Touching on the World Cup in Qatar, do you feel, with it being a Winter World Cup, the quality of the football could be potentially better? Obviously, with it being halfway through a season, so players are potentially hitting the peak regarding fitness, rather than it being at the tail end of a season and players have played 56 games already, or so many like that.
Not quite sure if it will be better as such, because I feel like the players probably do manage their bodies coming up towards the end of the season to prepare for a summer tournament. They do get a bit of a break, but I think the main factor in seeing a different style of play in Qatar will be the weather conditions.
Yeah.
It might be a much slower game. I don't think you'll see many long balls. Many runs in behind compared to usual. It'll be interesting to see the stats coming out of the back end of that World Cup and how the style of play maybe did change.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be an interesting one and definitely a first. Obviously, with it being in the winter. I just want to touch on what your opinions are. Obviously, you're from Northern Ireland. Do you feel that within the transfer market for English players, their price are inflated in the Premier League just because they are English talent?
Yeah, but I feel maybe sometimes rightly so, because when you do bring a player in from a foreign country, it may take them a season or a season and a half to settle. Whereas when you bring an English player in, you might pay a bit of a higher price, but you do expect them to settle in within maybe a few months. So I feel like that's maybe rightly so. Maybe not to the stage where you're paying, maybe 20, 30 million more for an English player, but I feel like it is certainly less risk buying an English player, and that is maybe why clubs then think that they can demand such high transfer fees for an English player.
Yeah. I think one that really sums it up, which I found, was obviously N'Golo Kante to Chelsea, and then a year later Danny Drinkwater to Chelsea. I think Kante was, I've got 32.2 million, and 1 year later Danny Drinkwater was 34.1 million. So I think even though you could argue in that Leicester side Kante was more influential and put better performances in, somehow Drinkwater, well, they got a higher price for Drinkwater. Could you argue that's because English or other factors maybe?
There's too many factors, that's the thing. It's hard to put your finger on it, but my opinion, it was maybe a bad bit of business because he didn't really turn out that well.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas the Kante one might have been just a good bit of business. It might have been lucky. He might have had less years left on his contract at Leicester, which might have determined that. But just to sum it all up, really, I do think that English players do have slightly more inflated prices in the transfer market, but there is an argument for why their prices are a bit higher. So we're coming towards the end of our podcast. Let's just sum it up with so the Euros are obviously suspended till next summer. We hope that everything's sorted by then and it does go ahead. If you were to pick a starting lineup, now include formation as well. If you were to pick a starting lineup for that Euros, the first game, and ideally you want that lineup to continue the whole way through, what would it be?
I think for the formation, although it did work with 3 at the back last time, I've gone 4-3-3.
Right, okay. I see why you would do that. Maybe it's quite adaptable.
Yeah. What formation have you gone with?
I'd go for a 4-3-3 as well. I think in the current moment, England don't really have many out and out wingers as such. So if you were going for the likes of a 4-4-2, I don't think it would work. And also I feel like their centre back department isn't exactly as strong as the rest of the pitch, so I'd maybe stay away from playing 3 at the back. Just like the way he stuck Kyle Walker in there in the last World Cup. Yeah,
definitely. So who? This is quite a tough one. Who have you got as a goalkeeper then?
To be honest with you, I haven't quite seen enough of the English goalkeepers other than Pickford. I know Pickford's good with the ball at his feet, which is needed in the modern game now. And he has been playing for a club at Everton where the expectation is pretty high. He's been through the highs and the lows of this season, and he's now got a good manager in Carlo Ancelotti. Who I think will maybe guide him to his best form. So in this current moment, if we're to look ahead, I think Pickford might be the man who I put in there, just because he's experienced it all before as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's a pretty low risk option, whereas I think all the other options, the likes of Dean Henderson, Pope might be high risk.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should say that because in goal for me, I've got Dean Henderson.
Oh.
Yeah, my thinking behind it is this next season, I believe will be the make or break. If he has another good season, then I reckon he's
yes, but what if he goes back to United and he's playing behind De Gea?
Exactly. It like I say, it all depends on how he performs next year. He definitely, obviously, he hasn't played for England yet, which is quite a worry. Which I feel like he wouldn't have played this summer. But given time over the next 12 months, if he does get a few starts, then I don't see why not. I know Pope's got more clean sheets, but he has conceded less goals than Nick Pope.
Yeah.
I think with Pickford, for me, the main problem is that he makes too many big errors, and fair play, he does make good saves, but he makes good saves because he makes the big errors, and sometimes big errors
Yeah.
are more costly than making a good save, which is not what you need in tournament football, because especially in knockout games, one mistake and you're on that plane home. So I think we'll move on to defence then. We're both going with the back four. Who have you thrown in at right back then?
I think it has to be Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Yeah, I think that's an easy one.
This season he's got 12 assists in the Premier League. He's been a sort of constant throughout that side. And he also showed good form in the Champions League last season as well, especially with that bit of creativity with the corner against Barcelona. I think that's the kind of thing that England have maybe been lacking in their squad for a lot of time now. Players that can sort of have that wee bit of inventiveness. But I think he comes close with our Wan-Bissaka, because I feel like Wan-Bissaka has started to show really what he's made of at Man United. He's an absolutely fantastic defender. He maybe could improve. He maybe could improve his attacking productivity, but if you're wanting a fullback, if you're
especially playing at Man United.
And the thing is, if we're thinking about next season, we don't really know what Wan-Bissaka might develop into. But I would go for Trent Alexander-Arnold. What about yourself?
Yeah, same here. I've got Trent down there. Let's move on to the two centre backs. Who have you got pairing there?
I'll just go over these quickly. I'd say Maguire and Gomez.
Yep, same here. I think it's hard to look past them two.
I think it's hard to look past them. Gomez has had a decent season. He's experiencing sort of he's experiencing sort of the pressures of well, I know the season's been halted, but going to try and win the league in the coming months when the season does resume. And he's also experienced a lot of Champions League football, whereas Alexis Jones-Stones, he's been injured for a while. I'm not really sure if he'll be a constant in the City side. Maguire's obviously had the experience of captain United.
So let's move on to left back then. Who have you put in there?
I'll go for Chilwell. What about yourself?
Same with me. I was torn between Chilwell and Shaw, if I'm being honest. Because the way I thought Shaw is, obviously United recently Ollie's been throwing him into a back three, and he's not been doing awful there. So I think if you put him there and your backs are against the wall, you need to defend the lead, you could throw Chilwell on, put him wing back, and just slot Shaw into a back three. But yeah, I've gone with Chilwell anyway if I'm starting with a back four.
I think Chilwell's form's been quite good this season. And
it's whether Leicester can carry it on as well.
Yeah, and you could also maybe see Chilwell getting a move to another club.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll move on to midfield. Your midfield three. What way would you have your midfield three? Would you have two defensive midfielders and one attacking, or?
I've gone one defensive with two attacking, but I've got Henderson sitting, Captain Jordan, and then I've got Maddison with Oxlade-Chamberlain in front, because I feel Oxlade-Chamberlain could help Henderson when it comes to defending, a bit of box to box.
I agree with two of those.
Yeah, I know which one you're going to disagree with.
I'm going to go same midfield, Grealish over Maddison.
Yeah.
I'll back up your 2 points on the other two players. But Grealish, I feel like he's certainly experienced a lot more pressures with being at Aston Villa.
Do you think
leading that team?
Yeah, for him to become or get into this team next year, do you think he has to leave Villa?
No, not necessarily. I think Villa have to stay in the Premier League for him to get into this team. But I don't. That's the number one thing. But I don't think that he does have to leave Villa to get into that team. I feel like his ability to do everything sort of going both ways is good. He can win the ball. He's strong. He can drive the ball. He scores goals. You know, he's got 9 goals in all competitions this season for a struggling Villa, and 8 assists.
Maddison's only got 6 goals. So.
Yeah, so I think you've got stats and the opinion of what I have.
I think what I found as well, which surprised me, was talk about the other midfield we've got in there is Oxlade-Chamberlain. 35 appearances for England with 7 goals, and I think for a midfielder, that's quite a good return. But although none of them have come at a summer tournament, but you know it could.
I think he's transformed
well.
Oxlade-Chamberlain since his Arsenal days.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's just experienced another thing at Liverpool where he's playing alongside Jordan Henderson as well, so that helps.
Yeah.
Front three was pretty hard for me. He was sort of stuck over whether to put. I was sort of stuck over that right side. Who to put on the right side of the three? What about yourself?
Same for me. It was quite a tough one, but I've come to a final decision. I'm guessing we've both got Kane spearheading that.
Yeah, Kane. Have to have Kane.
Yeah, I think
32 goals in 45 games for England. Fantastic.
And then
I don't you're not going to get anybody that matches that. It would be hard to justify him not being in the team. You know.
Exactly, and especially with 6 goals at the last World Cup, you just can't look past him. So who have you gone for on your right side?
On the right side, we went with Sterling. Sterling ahead of Sancho.
I've gone for Sancho for that one.
Yeah, I feel like Sterling has experienced the last tournament. His form at City's been really good. Whereas actually, Sterling. I think Sterling will have to maintain, what he has done until next summer. Really to the highest level to get in instead of Sancho. But Sancho for me at the moment, he's, what would you probably say? He's probably had one proper good season.
Yeah.
Whereas Sterling, I'd say, he's probably had a good 3 seasons under his belt now. And probably 2 of them seasons have been real top quality where he's been performing at all levels.
Yeah, I think
I do think. Yep, go on.
What pushed it for me, I think, tipped it for Sancho over Sterling. I think Sterling plays unbelievably well for City because he has got the likes of Kevin De Bruyne and David Silva. You could argue putting it on a plate, whereas he won't. Yeah. I don't think he'll have that sort of world-class creativity behind him in midfield, and I think Sancho just has that sort of electric pace, and he's got that ability and confidence to take on a man. And you've seen with the amount of assists he's just got that ability as well to find that man in the middle. And I think him and Kane could potentially, if you can get them two on the same wavelength, I think it could be lethal.
Good point, but I just think at the minute I'm playing pretty safe with man. It's like the goalkeeper. I like to play it safe. I go for Sterling, but I could see Sancho developing into another sort of demon in the next year or so. It'd be really dangerous.
Who have we gone left wing then? Left on the left hand side.
I think now that we've narrowed it down a bit, I think it's a bit straightforward. I've went for Rashford.
Yeah, see.
I think the sort of weight he's carried on his shoulders the past sort of couple of years will put him in real good stead to develop in the next couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Now that United, I think, are going to push on to the next level. And I think next season, especially, that Rashford will really see the best of him.
Definitely.
Playing on the left side, I do feel like that's his most natural position.
I feel like
he's very good at running at defenders.
He is, and cutting inside, and he's got that. He's kind of developed that Ronaldo-esque strike. When he shoots. But do you feel Rashford wants to be a left winger or a left forward? Or do you think he's one of these players that in his head wants to be a striker and kind of loses a bit of confidence when the manager puts him out there on the left?
I like to think as a professional that he would understand that his there's a reason why managers keep playing him on the left. And then when he does come up to England as well, that there is a real world class striker, proven striker in there, and Harry Kane. So I feel like it wouldn't affect him too much. We have seen him perform at a high level coming in from the left. So no, I honestly don't think it would affect things at all.
Yeah, I think even though he's still quite young, I think he's got an experienced head on his shoulders, because obviously playing at United for these years and having the pressure of being this next best thing at United, it has potential to take a lot out of someone. But I feel like he's handled it really well. He comes across as a lad who's got his feet on the ground from what I've seen, and he can only push on next year. Hopefully can stay injury free. I think that's the main thing about some of these players. They've just got to make sure that they stay fully fit and not injured for the tournament, because that was the worry going into this summer. You look at Kane.
Yeah.
Kane was potentially going into this tournament with... He could have missed it. He wasn't having much game time leading up. Rashford's being injured, and you think maybe it is a blessing that it's been moved an extra year, so our team is fully fit.
I think it is a blessing, to be honest, and we'll have you will have
he's already
you'll have
already.
No, I'm not turning sides. You'll have a
you might be there you've still got a chance.
Oh, we might be there, maybe
maybe,
though my hopes are never high, but you don't know. No, I do think that oh dear, I'll speak about that after. I do think that there, as I mentioned, the players at Chelsea as well, I think the likes of them will be contenders for the squad next year.
Yeah.
I think we'll really see the best in them.
Well, I think that finishes off for the England stuff. I think just before we do finish, I think we should touch on Northern Ireland and their expectations. Obviously, we found out yesterday or a few days ago that Michael O'Neill was stepping down. He was expected to take you to the Euros, but obviously he has got commitments with Stoke. Who do you want to come in as manager, and potentially who do you see coming in?
I think first and foremost you want somebody that's from within, that has really... I think that's the best way to do it with Northern Ireland, a country like Northern Ireland, because if you pay a lot of money to get a big name in, okay, they're a decent proven manager, but they don't exactly know our league as well, which a lot of players do come from. There's a lot of young players that come into our league, develop, then move to maybe like a League One team in England, and then do progress up to the Championship, then the Premier League. That tends to be the way it goes, and Michael O'Neill really did take an interest in that. As you've seen, the likes of Liam Boyce, Gavin White, who's now at Cardiff City, them guys have been in the squad, and there's many others as well in the squad that have taken that pathway. So I think you need somebody from within who's willing to show an interest in our league, as well as sort of and wants to build something rather than just wanting to pick from the current talent pool, go through one tournament, then leave. So I feel like the contenders would be Jim Magilton, who obviously has experience managing QPR and Ipswich, and he's the elite performance director at the IFA at the minute. Basically managing all the underage teams, or Ian Barclaw, who is the under-21 manager. Obviously, he was the manager over the win against, I think it was last season, against Spain under-21s, and a couple of other high-profile wins, which has just been brilliant. So I think he'd be maybe just go for Ian Barclaw, because he'd be the one that knows the current set of under-21s and might be able to provide a good pathway, because at the end of the day we don't have a large talent pool.
Yeah, it is quite a confined country to choose it from.
Yeah.
Could you see someone like potentially Sam Allardyce doing the job?
I'd like to see someone like Sam Allardyce, just because it would probably be entertaining, but deep down, no, don't think so. But
practicality is not there.
I don't think he'd be considered, but I think it would be interesting, very interesting. And what's to say somebody like that wouldn't do a good job?
Exactly.
He's definitely got lots of experience.
He's got 100% international record.
Oh dear.
Yep. Well, I think that wraps it up nicely for today's episode.
Yep.
So
well.
Thank you very much.
Good discussion.
Yep, indeed it was, and hopefully everyone enjoyed listening, and they'll join us again next week.
Yes, thanks very much, and bye.